like to call to order the meeting of the Centerville Board of Education for Tuesday, May 26, 2020. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Here.
Dr. Rohr?
Here.
Mr. Schroyer?
Here.
Megan Sparks?
Here.
Mr. Dahl?
Here. Next item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag
of the United States of America,
of the United States, to the republic
for which it
it
stands,
stands,
One
one
nation,
nation,
under
God,
God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
liberty, and justice for all.
justice for all.
Please be seated. Next item on the agenda is to approve the agenda as presented. Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes. Next item on the agenda is Board of Education report. Legislative report, Mrs. Sparks.
I have no report this month, but I am watching how the CARES funding is being allocated, especially to the private schools. So that's just something I'm keeping my eye on right now, but there's no official report tonight. Thank you.
You're welcome. Next thing we have is for Megan to introduce our student board reps. Megan?
Okay, Madison is Jacob isn't on here, right? So Madison and I is gonna lead the kids and their reports. Go ahead, Madison. Thank you. Unmute yourself, Madison.
So the first week of May, we conducted about 14 interviews. I'm sorry, guys, I'm freezing. We conducted about 14 interviews of students, and during those interviews, there were several issues such as bullying. The interviews, we have decided to keep 2 students, a rising sophomore and a rising junior, to replace Jacob and I next year. We cannot release the names because they have not been notified quite yet, and we would like them to be notified over mail or over a phone call. Additionally, these 2 students will also be taking on their own project or taking over Jacob and I's project, so there's a seamless transition.
Okay, I just want to clarify, because of the Monday being a holiday, I'm worried that the kids who did not get the position haven't received their letters yet. So I am waiting until Friday, and then I will call the 2 students who did, who we chose, and I will be calling them personally to offer them the position. But we're just waiting until Friday to ensure that the other students receive their letter via U.S. Postal Service, if that makes sense. So, okay.
Thank you. Who's next?
Grace, you want to go?
Sure. So I am covering the topic of student IDs for next year at the high school. And our next step in the process of revising the policy is to be meeting with Mr. Carroll, which will happen sometime later in the summer.
Okay, Katie.
I've been doing some research on class rank and whether or not the students would find it more beneficial to keep our current system or to switch to a Latin honor system. I think it's a good idea to wait until we can meet in person or maybe just in July to give my reasons on why I think we should switch our systems. But I've also been doing some research on to whether the student body is in favor of it at all to pursue it. And I did a pretty short poll with some students that I know are at the very top of their class, and I got a pretty surprising 13-0 unanimous response in favor of the Latin honor system over what we currently do. Some of the reasons were just they feel like they're being pitted against each other. They can't take the classes they want. The gap between the top students is so small, and just other reasons like that.
Thanks, Katie. Okay, Mohammed.
Hey, so shortly we will be expanding our social media efforts through more digital designs that can further promote information about each student rep's individual projects that we could just put out on social media to give high school students more information about what we're doing and what's going on.
Thank you, Mohammed. And I believe that's all for tonight.
Thank you. They need to stay on, Megan. Are you releasing them or?
They can stay on or they can go. They can stay on them because I believe their testing is over. Correct, guys? You guys are all done with your, okay, perfect. They can stay. Thank you.
Just want to be sure. Thank you all. Thanks for the reports. The next item on the agenda is the hearing of the public. Board of Education provides this as a convenient opportunity for public comment before any official action is taken. Since we're having this meeting through a video streaming method, the board has sent out notice that comments should be submitted in writing to the board's office to be read at this time. The board will listen to all the comments, generally not engage in discussion or dialogue at this time. Matters requiring follow-up will be directed to the superintendent. Dr. Henderson, do we have any comments to read at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Dahl. I believe we do, and I'll ask Sarah Swan, our community relations specialist, to read those now.
Thank you.
Good evening. We do have two questions for me to read tonight, so I will do that. The first one is from Gina Hernandez, who is a parent of 2 Centerville students. And her question is, when students return to school, will there be a temperature check? If so, what is the fever mark? I know that parents were not called to pick up their child unless the temperature was above 100.4. To me, a fever is anything over 99. And that's the end of her comment. And the second question.
Can I just respond real quick so I can answer that one? A fever is 100.4 or higher. 99 is not considered a fever, just so everyone knows. So 100.5 or above is a fever.
Thanks, Dave.
Dave, isn't that consistent with the CDC guidelines as well?
Yeah, it usually is. Now, again, a lot of it will vary depending on how the temperature is taken. Some people say if you do the scanners, it may be 100 or more, but typically 100.4 or above would be the fever.
Thank you, Dave.
Yep.
Ms. Swan?
Yes, the second question is from Jeff Barker, 15 Dale Ridge in Centerville. I'm writing to you to see if you might know the plan for the students/families that have not or do not complete the online learning. I know you have several families that feel there will not be any consequences and their children will move on just like ours who have worked super hard. If you do not have the answer to this question, could you please address it at tonight's board meeting? And that is the end of that question.
Thank you, Sarah and Dr. Henderson. I'm assuming you will get back with that person and give him appropriate response.
Yes, we will definitely follow up with Mr. Barker tomorrow.
Great, thank you. Next item on the agenda is the treasurer's reports. Ms. Auber?
Yes, thank you. I am going to share my screen. And we'll review for the board basically the same information that we talked about last Monday night, but we'll just review that again for the public meeting. So May is, there we go. May is when we need to do a 5-year forecast revision to the Ohio Department of Education. It's a required filing by the end of the month. We did discuss this probably in pretty good detail on May 18th at our work session, and tonight I'm asking for your approval on that. It's a little bit later on the agenda. So some of the revisions to this forecast include some accounting changes that we've made, some updates to 2020, we'll talk about those, and then also state funding reduction that was released. And then I want to just mention a few future risks that we have in terms of our finances moving forward. Quickly, just to go over the accounting changes. Again, these are accounting changes, so it's a lot of internal stuff that we do in our accounting system, but these changes have a $0 impact on the bottom line of the forecast. Some of the expenses that we have for students that leave our district, specifically for our STEM school students and also for some of the special education vouchers that are awarded or that are given to students, they were just reductions to our revenue instead of showing as an expense. So that is a change that we're making moving forward to where we're showing the full amount of our state funding and then showing that expense similar to how we show expenses for our open enrollment kids that go out of Centerville schools, and then also for students that choose to attend community schools. Second item is we have some services that we receive from the Educational Service Center, mostly special education services that were being posted to a salary account. So they were showing up as an expense on our salaries. This is a contracted service though, and so we're going to start reflecting that cost in its appropriate line item moving forward as a contracted service. And then the last one that's significant to the forecast is how we have reported our insurance premiums that we collect from our employees in the past. We've always shown that as a revenue and then shown 100% of the insurance as an expense. So now we're going to show that net amount just to show the board's cost moving forward. Again, just to reiterate, there's no change to the bottom line due to these changes. So the things we changed for fiscal year 2020 specifically is that we're working now with 10 months of actual data versus when you saw the forecast in the fall. We only had 1 or 2 months, completed at the time that it was approved. So we have a lot more actual data. Our salaries and benefits are going to be very close in total to what we are currently showing. We did make some reductions to our business services accounts just for things like utilities and stuff that we think our costs will come in a little bit lower than what we had anticipated. On our revenue side, our taxes and our rollback and homestead payments that we receive, those are actual collections now, and so that we've updated those numbers to actual numbers. And we've also incorporated the state funding reduction that the district received, which we'll talk about a little bit more here in detail. $775 million was reduced from the state's budget from May 5th through the end of June. I want to point out, because I think it's important, that 60% of that cut is coming from some form of education, either K-12 or higher ed is seeing significant reductions. So our share of that reduction is $2.119 million. And that is a reduction that is happening between now and June 30th. And so the reason that that's important is because it gives us very little time and very little opportunity, really, because we've basically obligated or spent all of our funds for the year that we had planned on. So we really can't react to that $2 million reduction that is happening between now and the end of our fiscal year. In the 5-year forecast, we have decided to leave that funding level reduced for future years. It's possible it could come back. It's possible that it could be additional cuts even beyond the $2 million. So we made the decision administratively, because we don't know yet at this point, we made the decision to just leave it out moving forward. So the future risks, there's several areas that we acknowledge and recognize that that we have risks in terms of our finances. State funding, I just mentioned that. So state funding is definitely one of them. All the webinars and the talks that I'm listening to are saying that the cut next year is probably going to be more. So more than that $2 million, but we don't know how much. There's been nothing released on that yet. And so we're waiting to get some more information from the government on that. The first reduction was based on local capacity. And so because Centerville is a wealthier district, that cut for us was more. And I expect that to be about the same methodology when they calculate additional cuts. Also, from a revenue standpoint, our local taxes, we were up for reappraisal. We are up for reappraisal in 2020, which would impact 2021. Montgomery County has requested to have the reappraisal delayed by 1 year from the Ohio Tax Commissioner. I don't have word yet on whether or not that will happen. So it's just an impact, because if you remember back in January, we talked about potential 10% or more in our values going up. And so if they delay that, then we basically just stay status quo for another year. Also, unemployment rates and how long those unemployment rates stay up there could impact individuals' ability to pay their tax bills, which means that our delinquencies could be higher than normal. The other part of revenue that I actually don't have on the slide here is something that we don't know as well is if the federal government steps in with another stimulus bill, which I'm hearing, bits and pieces about, that could help us. And so I anticipate additional cuts, but it's also possible that maybe that could be at least helped a little bit by a federal stimulus package. But again, we don't have that information yet. And then on the expense side, which is something that we're currently working on, and we usually have the majority of the budget built by now. We're behind on that. I think it's okay that we're behind on that because we really don't know what education is going to look like in the fall. PPE that we may need to purchase, online learning, a blended learning approach, whatever that looks like in the fall, we're going to have to adapt to that, and that's going to impact our budget as well. But again, we need more guidance on that. So here's the forecast. I know you've reviewed it as a board, and at this point, I'll just ask you if you have any questions.
I do not.
Laura, could you use your cursor to point out where the $2 million was taken out of the budgets for the public to see?
For the state funding?
Yes.
Yes, that's here in the revenue on the top section where it says state. In fiscal year 20, we have a reduced amount.
Well, sometimes people need to see it in writing, so that's a way for them to see the difference between the 14 million and the $12 million. Yeah. Anybody else got any questions or comments you want to make?
No, thanks, John.
Do not.
Thank you.
Laura, you have anything else at this time before we go through your recommendations?
No, that'll be it.
Okay. Next item on the agenda is to consider approving the treasurer's recommendations, including the April 2020 financial statements, monthly financial report, fund activity report, appropriations report, general funding spending report, general fund summary comparison, POs included in the statement number 7, approved by administration then and now, certified by the treasurer and supported by board resolution totaling $47,860.25. Need a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mrs. Dernbaugh,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
Yes.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. Next item, we need a motion to consider approving the minutes for the following Board of Education meetings: April 27, 2020, our regular meeting; May 18, 2020, our special meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh,
Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
Yes.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. This is the 5-year forecast that Ms. Sauber was talking about. So we need a motion to consider approving the general fund 5-year forecast and assumptions for submission to the Ohio Department of Education.
So
Motion,
moved.
please.
Second.
Questions or comments? All in favor? I'm sorry, call the roll.
Mrs. Dernbaugh,
Yes. Yes.
Dr. Rohr,
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer,
Yes.
Megan Sparks,
Yes.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes. Dr. Henderson, we have to take B1 and B2 separately. The other items could be taken together. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. Superintendent recommendations. The superintendent recommends accepting resignations as listed on Schedule A. Superintendent recommends the employment, change of employment status, or change of contract status for the certificated personnel listed on Schedule B, the salaries, programs, and on the effective dates given. Superintendent recommends the employment or change of employment status for the support staff personnel listed on Schedule C, the salaries, programs, and on the effective dates given. Superintendent recommends the employment of the personnel listed on Schedules D and D1 for supplemental contracts or extra duty assignments. And the superintendent recommends the granting of leaves of absence for personnel listed on Schedule E the reasons, and on the dates given.
So moved.
So moved.
Right? You have it, Laura?
Who was the second?
I'll second.
Dave?
Okay.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes. Next item is Schedule B1. The superintendent recommends the employment, change of employment status, or change contract status for certificated personnel listed on Schedule B1 for the salaries programs on the effective dates given.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Abstain.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes. Schedule B1, the superintendent recommends the employment, change of employment status, change in contract status for the certificated personnel listed on Schedule B2 for the salaries programs and on the effective dates given.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mr. Dahl?
Abstain. Next item is 9B, consider authorizing Adam Sorello, Director of Secondary Curriculum and Instruction, Cherie Calapi, Director of Elementary Curriculum and Instruction, Tammy Darup, Director of Student Services, Dan Tarpey, Director of Human Resources, and Interim Treasurer Laura Sauber to apply and act as authorized representatives for Title I through Title 6B, and Andrea Constable for the preschool grant.
So moved.
Second.
John, can you repeat all those names for me?
That was close. Call the roll, please.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes. Next item on the agenda, pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G1, need a motion to approve the board to adjourn to executive session for the purpose of considering employment of an employee of the school district. No other business will be conducted except to come out of executive session to adjourn. Need a motion, please.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll.
Mrs. Dernbaugh?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes. So, Dr. Henderson, Mr. Moore, you're going to take care of the honors?
Yes, he will put us into a breakout room and where we can have our conversation, and we'll come out of that just to adjourn, and he'll end the meeting then at that time.
Thank you. Tell us when we're ready.
Yeah, give me